Official field reports. Unedited camera footage. Pure justice. You are watching Bodycam incident reports.
Fit the description.
I'm walking to my hotel. I've done nothing wrong.
Off the phone. Show me ID.
You don't have cause. Check my credentials.
Get on the ground.
You're making a huge mistake. My badge is in my left pocket.
Shut up. You're under arrest.
The sound of metal ratcheting against bone cut through the crisp autumn air. The cold steel of the handcuffs bit into wrists that had shaken hands with presidents signed international treaties and drafted policies protecting the nation's digital infrastructure. Officer Caleb Knox, 26 years old, stood panting over the kneeling form of Julian Vance. 45. A man whose security clearance was 3 levels higher than the officer's captain. Knox felt the surge of adrenaline, the rush of the capture, the righteous indignation of a predator who believes he has caught prey. He did not know that the man he had just forced into the dirt of a Beacon Hill sidewalk was the Assistant Director of the Department of Homeland Security. He did not know that the phone lying on the cobblestones staring up at them with a blinking green light was transmitting every second of this violation directly to the Chief Prosecutor of the county. Officer Caleb Knox had been with the Boston Police Department for 4 years. 4 years of aggressive policing. 4 years of stats. In the precinct break room, they called him the Hawk. He had a talent for finding trouble, or more accurately, he had a talent for manufacturing it. His personnel file was a study in contradictions. On one page, commendations for high arrest numbers in narcotics sweeps. On the next, a litany of civilian complaints, rudeness, excessive force, unlawful detention, racial profiling. 13 complaints in 48 months. A staggering average of 1 complaint every 3 to 4 months. Most officers go an entire career with fewer than 2, but Caleb Knox was considered proactive. His supervisors, caught in the eternal bureaucratic struggle between community relations and crime statistics, viewed him as a necessary blunt instrument. They saw the arrests. They ignored the cost. That Tuesday evening in November, the cost would finally come due, and the bill would be $6.2 million payable by the taxpayers of Boston, along with the complete destruction of a precinct's leadership structure. Julian Vance had spent 20 years in federal service, a graduate of Yale Law, a former federal prosecutor, and now a top-tier executive at Homeland Security overseeing cyber threat mitigation. He was in Boston for a keynote speech at a cybersecurity summit held at the Heinz Convention Center. He was a man of precision. He wore bespoke suits not out of vanity but out of a respect for the office he held. He spoke with the measured cadence of someone whose words could move markets or mobilize agencies. It was 7:15 p.m. The historic Beacon Hill neighborhood was bathed in the warm, flickering glow of gas street lamps. The air smelled of wood smoke and the salt of the nearby harbor. Vance had decided to skip the gala dinner. He wanted a quiet walk back to his hotel, the Liberty, to clear his head before a scheduled call with his old law school friend, Marcus Sterling, now the district attorney for Suffolk County. Vance was wearing a charcoal wool overcoat, a cashmere scarf, and polished Oxfords. He was walking on the sidewalk, admiring the architecture, speaking into his wireless earbud. "Marcus, the infrastructure vulnerability is real," Vance was saying, his voice low and calm. "If we don't get the budget increase for the new firewalls, the municipal grids are sitting ducks." "I hear you, Julian." Marcus's voice came through clear. "I can pull some strings with the state legislature, get them to push the feds. By the way, how's the air up there in Beacon Hill Thin?" Vance chuckled. "It's beautiful, Marcus. Quiet, peaceful. A spotlight hit him, blinding, harsh. A cruiser had pulled up aggressively onto the curb, blocking the pedestrian path. The door flew open before the car had fully settled on its suspension. Officer Caleb Knox stepped out, hand already resting on his holster. "Hey, you stop right there?" Vance stopped. He squinted against the light, raising a hand to shield his eyes. "Can I help you, officer? Where are you coming from? Where are you going?" Knox demanded, closing the distance rapidly. Vance paused. He knew the law better than the man approaching him. He knew that without reasonable suspicion, this was a consensual encounter. He was free to leave. but he also knew the reality of being a black man in America regardless of the badge in his pocket. De-escalation was the priority. "I'm walking to the Liberty Hotel, officer. I'm a guest there." "You don't look like a guest," Knox snapped. "We've had reports of break-ins in this area. Porch pirates. Guys in coats looking for packages. Let me see some ID." "I haven't committed any infraction," Vance said calmly. "And I am not required to show identification for walking down a public street. However, I am a federal agent and—" "I didn't ask for your life story, I asked for ID. You're acting nervous, you're shaking." "I am shivering because it is 40 degrees, officer. I am on the phone. If you'll allow me to—" "Get off the phone, now." This was the moment the timeline fractured. In one version of reality, the officer listens. In this one, shaped by 4 years of unchecked aggression, Knox escalated. Vance looked at the officer. "I'm speaking with District Attorney Sterling. I'm going to keep this line open for my safety." Knox lunged. The phone clattered to the stones. "Get on the ground. Now I will not ask you again." This brings us back to the dirt, to the humiliation, to the knee in the back. Julian Vance, a man who advised the president on national security, was face down on the cold brick sidewalk, his cheek pressed against the grit. He felt the heavy weight of Officer Knox on his lower back. The pain in his shoulders was sharp as his arms were wrenched upward. "You are making a mistake," Vance said, his voice strained but steady. "Check my left inner pocket. My credentials are in a leather wallet. Do it now." "Shut up. You're under arrest for disorderly conduct and resisting." Knox panted, tightening the cuffs until they clicked to their last notch. He grabbed his radio. "Dispatch 1 male in custody, resisting, requesting transport." "Officer 492. The dispatch crackled. "What is your location?" "Corner of Mont Vernon and Walnut." "Copy 492. Be advised, we are getting a priority call from the DA's office." The dispatcher's voice hesitated, confused. "They are reporting an officer in distress. No correction. They are reporting a civilian in distress at your location." Knox frowned, wiping sweat from his forehead. "What, I'm the only unit here?" "Dispatch to 492, stand by. Captain Miller is en route, ETA 2 minutes. He says, do not move the suspect." Knox looked down at Vance. The man wasn't struggling. He wasn't screaming. He was just breathing, his eyes closed in what looked like painful meditation. "Who are you?" Knox whispered, a seed of doubt finally penetrating the armor of his arrogance. Vance opened his eyes. They were cold, hard. "I told you, my name is Julian Vance, and the man who is on the phone, the man who just called your captain, is the district attorney." A black SUV screeched around the corner, hopping the curb. Blue lights flashed silently in the grill. Captain Thomas Miller, the precinct commander, jumped out before the vehicle fully stopped. He was not wearing his hat. He looked terrified. "Knox, step away from him!" Miller roared. "Captain, I caught this guy casing houses he refused to ID, and I said step away." Miller sprinted over, kneeling beside Vance. "Director Vance, sir, I am Captain Miller. I am so sorry." Miller fumbled for his keys, his hands shaking as he unlocked the cuffs. He helped Vance sit up. Vance rubbed his wrists. There were deep red indentations. The skin was broken on the right side. Vance stood up slowly, brushing the dirt from his $3,000 suit. He did not look at Miller. He looked directly at Knox. "Officer," Vance said, his voice terrifyingly quiet. "You detained me because I fit a profile in your head. You escalated because I questioned your authority. You used force because you felt small. You did not find a burglar. You assaulted a senior federal official." Knox stood frozen. The color had drained from his face. I thought—" "You didn't think—" Vance cut him off. "That is the problem." Another car arrived, a sedan. District Attorney Marcus Sterling got out. He looked at Vance, saw the dirt, the torn coat, the bleeding wrist. He looked at Captain Miller, then at Officer Knox. "I heard it all, Julian," Sterling said, walking over. "I heard the threat to use the taser. I heard the refusal to check credentials." He turned to Knox. "I have the audio recording of this stop on my cloud server. It started recording the moment you shouted." Knox looked at his captain for support. He found none. Miller was staring at the ground, calculating his own pension. "Get in your car, Knox," Miller said softly. "Surrender your weapon. Cap, Give me your gun and your badge, now. Before we continue this story, I want to ask you, where are you reading this from? Have you ever witnessed an interaction like this? If this is your first time reading our stories, please consider following or subscribing. We believe that shedding light on these dark corners of the justice system is the only way to clean them out. Your support keeps us writing. The fallout was not immediate. It was a slow, crushing wave. The video footage came later. A doorbell camera from a brownstone across the street had captured the entire thing. The visual of a black man in a coat standing calmly while a white officer screamed and lunged at him was irrefutable. But it was the audio from the phone call that damned him. The Boston Police Department tried to get ahead of it. They issued a statement about a misunderstanding regarding jurisdiction. But Julian Vance was not a man to be managed. He was a man who understood systems. He filed a federal civil rights lawsuit, but unlike many others, he didn't just sue for damages. He sued for discovery. Vance's legal team, led by top civil rights attorneys from New York and Boston, demanded the complete disciplinary history of Officer Caleb Knox. They demanded the precinct's stop and frisk data for the last 5 years. They demanded the emails between supervisors regarding activity quotas. The city fought it. They claimed personnel files were protected. They claimed the data was proprietary. But the judge, having seen the video and heard the audio, granted every single motion. What emerged from the files was a horrifying portrait of systemic negligence. Caleb Knox was not a rogue apple. He was the product of a poisoned orchard. The Caleb Knox pattern. Year 1, 3 complaints, all for discourtesy. Knox was known for cursing at citizens, result verbal counseling. Year 2, 4 complaints. 1 for an unlawful car search. 1 for detention without cause. Result retraining on the Fourth Amendment. No suspension. Year 3, 5 complaints. 1 involved shoving a college student who asked for his badge number. The Internal Affairs investigator noted, Officer Knox displays a concerning lack of impulse control. Result, exonerated due to lack of video evidence. Year 4, the Vance incident. But the most damning document was a performance review from 6 months prior. A sergeant had written, Officer Knox produces high-activity numbers. While his approach is aggressive and generates friction with the community, his results in low-level enforcement are valuable to the precinct's metrics. They knew he was a ticking time bomb, and they kept winding him up because he brought in numbers. The Department of Justice, DOJ, didn't just open an inquiry. They descended upon the department. The investigation into the Boston PD's specialized units revealed that African Americans, who made up 22% of the city's population, accounted for 68% of the stops in the specialized units district. When the user asks for statistics, it is vital to provide the concrete reality of these situations. In 2020, widely available data indicated that black drivers were approximately 20% more likely to be stopped than white drivers nationwide. In some cities, that number jumped to 400% disproportionate to the population. Regarding the use of force, studies have shown that black individuals are 3.5 times more likely to experience non-lethal force during an encounter than whites. The lawsuit dragged on for 8 months. The city wanted to settle quietly. Vance refused. He wanted the deposition. He wanted Officer Knox under oath. The deposition of Caleb Knox was leaked to the press. In it, Vance's attorney asked a simple question. Officer Knox, when you saw Mr. Vance walking down the street, what specifically about his behavior was criminal? Knox, stripped of his uniform, sitting in a suit that didn't fit, looked small. He looked out of place. Out of place in America, the lawyer asked. Or out of place in a neighborhood you decided he couldn't afford? Knox didn't answer. The settlement was finalized in June. $6.2 million. It was the largest individual settlement for a non-injury civil rights violation in the state's history. But the money was the least significant part of the agreement. The Vance decree mandated zero tolerance for profiling, a 3-strikes rule for substantiated bias complaints resulting in automatic termination. Bystander intervention. Duty officers were now legally required to intervene if a partner was violating a citizen's rights with criminal penalties for failure to act. The check the record protocol. Before any physical detention, absent an immediate threat to life, officers were required to verify the story of the individual if verifiable evidence like a badge or phone call was offered. Independent audit. An external federal monitor would oversee the precinct for 5 years. Caleb Knox was fired. His certification was permanently revoked by the Massachusetts Peace Officer Standards and Training Commission. He would never carry a badge or a gun again. But the story doesn't end with the gavel banging. 6 months after the settlement, Julian Vance returned to Boston. He wasn't there for a conference. He was there to speak at a community center in Roxbury, a neighborhood far different from Beacon Hill. He stood on the stage, the scar on his wrist still faintly visible. "People ask me if I feel vindicated," Vance told the crowd. "They see the money, they see the firing, they think justice was served." He paused, looking out at the faces in the audience. Young men in hoodies, older women in Sunday hats, fathers holding their daughters. "Justice is not a check," Vance said softly. "Justice is the ability to walk home. Just to walk home. I had the power of the federal government behind me. I had a district attorney on the phone. I had a law degree, and none of it stopped the handcuffs from clicking. None of it stopped the assumption that I was a criminal." He leaned into the microphone. "If it can happen to the Assistant Director of Homeland Security, imagine what happens to the young man who works the late shift at the grocery store. Imagine what happens to the nurse coming home from the hospital. They don't have a DA on speed dial. They don't have a $6 million lawsuit. They just have the trauma. And that is why we cannot rest. Because the system didn't fail because it arrested me. The system failed because it was surprised that it arrested someone who could fight back." The room was silent. The lesson here is not about the triumph of a powerful man. It is about the fragility of dignity. We often think of rights as these solid, unbreakable shields. We think the Constitution is a wall that protects us. But as Julian Vance found out on that cold cobblestone street, rights are only as strong as the person enforcing them in the moment. When Officer Knox looked at Vance, he didn't see a human being with rights. He saw a target. He saw a stat. He saw a stereotype. And in that blindness, he broke something far more valuable than a law. He broke the trust that holds a society together. We must ask ourselves, how many Julian Vances are there who didn't have the badge? How many stories ended in a plea deal because the victim was too scared to fight? How many careers were ruined, not of the officers, but of the young men, stamped with a record they didn't deserve? True justice isn't fixing the mistake after it happens. True justice is preventing the mistake from ever being made. It is building a world where a man can walk down any street in any neighborhood at any time and be judged not by the color of his skin or the cut of his coat, but by the content of his character. Until that day comes, we must keep watching. We must keep recording. And we must keep telling these stories. Do you think the reforms mentioned in this story are enough to change police culture? Or is the problem deeper than policy? Let us know in the comments below. Your voice matters in this conversation.
Case analysis finalized. To stay updated with transparent operations, please hit like and subscribe. Thank you for choosing Bodycam Incident Reports.